Good morning, everyone. Kelly, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to
Buenos
our
días a todos y bienvenidos
Submittable Technical Review session. I'm Kelly
a
Magnus. I'm the
nuestra
Executive
revisión
Director of
técnica
the
de
Caribbean
entregables. Mi
Culture
nombre es
Fund.
Kelly Magnus
I'm going to
y
pause
dirijo
for a
el
second so that
Fondo
our comms officer,
Cultural.
Chris, can assign interpreters to their channels. We have, as usual, interpretation available in Spanish and in French, which you can access by toggling the little globe icon at the bottom right of your screen and selecting the language that you choose. With me this morning, we have, as usual, our interpreters, Tony and Janina, who are translating into Spanish and French, respectively. And we also have Chris Shield, our comms officer, and Katarina Ehrman, our grants manager, who will be leading today's session. I also want to say welcome and hello to all of you from Michelle Pierre-Louis and the members of the Caribbean Culture Fund Steering Committee. This is the third session that we've done for call 3. We started with an orientation session, just familiarizing everybody with the rules of the call. And then we had a grant writing session led by Marielle Barrow of Caribbean in Transit, which is one of our partners for our capacity building work. We followed that session up with a Q&A session last week. And I want you to know that the recordings for all these sessions are available on YouTube. So you can check them out at your leisure and see the details of the call and also hear some of the questions that your colleague applicants have asked already. You may also share some of the issues and questions that they had. So what we're going to do today is quite simple. We are going to walk you through our Submittable portal, which is the portal that we use for applications. We're going to spend about 30 minutes on that this morning. And as I said, Katarina will be leading that session. And then we're going to take questions in 3 kind of buckets. So the first questions will be those related to Submittable. We hope that you've had a chance with playing around with the application so far so that you can come with any specific technical questions that you have. And then we're going to take questions about the application process more broadly. If you have questions related to the residences and fellowships theme, I'm going to ask you to hold those towards the end, because if there is interest, and I'm going to ask you all to just drop a note in the chat in a second, we are thinking of having a separate session for residences and fellowships next week, Tuesday. So please hold your questions on residences and fellowships to the end, but drop us a note in the chat now to let us know if you are joining this session because you are planning on applying to theme 3.3, which is residences and fellowships. So with that, I hope you have a really good session, and I'm going to turn it over to Katarina.
Good morning. I'm Katarina Ehrman. I'm the grants manager of the Caribbean Culture Fund. And as Kelly said, I'm going to walk you through Submittable this morning. And I'm going to try to do this in 30 minutes, maybe less, we'll see. And the objective is really to show you Submittable for those of you that haven't seen it yet, and for those of you that have started playing around with Submittable, to see if there's any questions, anything that is confusing or anything that doesn't work. We have had that in our last call, that sometimes there are technical problems, or there were last time. We hope there aren't any this time. And so I'm going to do that. I'm just gonna directly show you as a first step on how we get to Submittable. For that, I need to share my screen. Share. So the easiest way to go on Submittable is really to go on our website, which is caribbeanculturefund.org. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you see the call for proposal 3 the description of the call up here. And then when you go further down, you see this button which says submit your proposal. Once you go on this one, it takes you directly to the Caribbean Culture Fund Submittable page. So once you get here, so it takes me directly onto this, no, I have to sign in afterwards. So when you get on this page, you see that there are different tabs. You have call 3.1, 3.2 in English, in Spanish, and in French. And then you also have the same thing for call 3, which is in the residencies and fellowship call, in English, Spanish, and in French. So you choose the one that fits you. I will take the English one since I'm speaking in English right now, and you click on submit. So I was signed in already. If I'm not signed in, it's going to ask you to sign in first, and then you get on this page that we're on right now. So the submittable platform, our platform is organized in two parts. The first part is the eligibility part. And this part is really for you to think about your proposal, to speak about it with your collaborators, and to really see if this call is for you, if we're aligned, if your project is aligned with our call. And all the questions that are here are trying to really check that box. And that's what you do in this first part. So alignment with the themes of the call is obviously very important. We have Art for Change, which is 3.1, and we have Caribbean collaboration. There's a brief reminder of both of these themes. And then it asks you to select the theme that you wish to apply for. I'm going to take Caribbean collaboration just because it has a couple of extra questions that Art for Change doesn't have. And it asks you very clearly, do you believe your project substantially aligns with one of the themes of this third call? Now, if it doesn't, and you click no, you're not eligible. So think about it and really make sure, because it's, I mean, even if you say yes and it's not really aligned, it will show later on in the application process. So this is really for you to see and because applications do take a lot of time, and we don't want you to waste your time. The next question is about the alignment with the countries. So this call is specifically for applicants and for projects that are based in Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Suriname, and also Haiti. So it asks you if you are based in one of the following countries, and if your project will take place in one of these countries. Since I selected the Caribbean collaboration call above, it has these three extra boxes here, which you don't see if you selected 3.1. So you need to confirm that your project is regional in scope or execution. You need to confirm that you will be planning and executing the project with collaborators based in at least one other Caribbean country or territory, in addition to the one above. Remember, this is Caribbean collaboration. So this includes, for us, the Caribbean is all the islands in the Caribbean Sea, and also the continental countries that have shorelines with the Caribbean Sea and that have historical ties with the Caribbean. So you confirm this, and since it's Caribbean collaboration that I selected, you will need to provide a confirmation about your planned partnership with a formal letter of intent. Then we have the alignment of with the values of the CCF and its donors. This is about art and culture for change. So there's commitment, there's inclusion, sustainability, transmission, and/or preservation. You can read through those and see if your project or whatever you're planning to do is aligned with these values. You have to also confirm that you understand these values, and that you will be later asked to explain your alignment with the values. The CCF will not consider exclusively commercial activities, activities with very high budgets or no proof of co-financing, and projects that disseminate sexist, racist, offensive, hateful, or violent content or violence, or advocate authoritarianism and anti-democratic ideologies. So this is also a box that you would want to check. Then there's a part 1.4 about the required documentation. So if you're applying as an individual, you will only need to have your personal ID of the project leader or the lead artist, right? And for organizations, groups, collectives, companies, any other more institutional actor, we will need legal registration documents, the bylaws or any other documents that describe how your organization is governed, tax registration or compliance documents, and the ID of the legal representative of your group. Are you able to it asks you, are you able to provide these legal documents? And then again, you will say yes. If there's any valid reason why these documents cannot be provided, we do have a little bit of latitude on that part, because we understand that context can be very challenging at times. So if that is your case, please reach out to grants@caribbeanculturefund.org so that we can just speak about it and see like what we could do. It asks, so this is the last question, the budget and bank information. These are the funds available under each call, 10,000 for 3.1 and 25,000 for 3.2. And the budget you are requesting from the Caribbean Culture Fund to carry out your project is within those limits. So you have two choices here, both are valid. You can seek the exact amount or less than of the funds indicated above, or if your project requires more funding, then you will need to provide proof of co-financing. So let me check this box. So the cost of my project requires more funding than what is indicated for the theme, and I wish to apply for, but I confirm that I have secured co-financing and have a formal letter that proves this. So anything that is outside of these budgets, you will need to provide a letter. And then the last box to check is that you confirm that the lead artist or the group has a bank account in their name. And that should be it. Now, if I forgot to check any of these boxes, which does happen quite often, it will not let you go to the next step. So really make sure that you've checked everything. We'll see if I did, and I did. All right. So this is the second part now. This is information about the applicant and the project. So this is really, oh, there's a spelling mistake here. This is really the part where you now get to present your project, yourself, your project. And this is the heart of the applications that the juries will see, and you will be evaluated upon. The other part is just as a start. So these questions, I will not go through all of them. They're very straightforward. Are you a project leader or a member of the team? They ask, how can we contact you? Which are the languages that you prefer communicating in? And what best describes you or your group? This might be something to go into a bit more. So we accept any constellation. But in general, they will be divided into individual artists. You can apply as an individual artist for both calls, right? For the fellowships and residencies call, it will have to be an organization or institutions. But for 3.1 and 3.2, it can be individual, and it can be a more institutional or group actor. So you have group collective, cultural organization, foundation, association, nonprofit organization, a social enterprise, a company or for-profit organization, or any other type of constitution you might have. So this part is important. So if you select individual here, you will obviously not be asked to upload information about your group. So I will check the group one because it has more questions later on. So then the next part is about the project leader or lead artist. Very straightforward. Again, the name, artist name. Here you have to upload your personal ID or any other personal identification document, which can be driver's license. It can even be your birth certificate, whatever you have available. Please enter your personal identification number that is on the document you uploaded, gender, date of birth, nationality. All of this is very straightforward. Which country is the project leader normally based in? So these are the countries that are eligible. And you will need to check one of those. Please upload your CV or resume and a headshot. Then there's the contact information. This is all very straightforward. And these, we will require the email and a phone number, but everything else you might not have, and that is no problem. Instagram, Facebook, website, X, LinkedIn. Then since I selected group or organization above, this is now the same information that we are asking about the group or organization, the registered name, address, and also where is your group or organization registered in. This again are the eligible countries here. You can't really select another country, or if you do, you have to really explain. And then there's the legal documents of your group. The legal registration document, your bylaws. You can upload multiple files. I think the maximum was, well, it says 5 here, 3 here. Just in case you're not sure which one is the right one. A tax registration or compliance document. And then the valid ID of your legal representative. It might be the same person that you already uploaded above, but just upload again because it's required here to upload something. And then also a photo or image that can represent your group or organization. Then afterward, again, the contact information, which is the same as for the, the individual applicant. And then you have the possibility to upload or to send us the link to an audio or video introduction to yourself or your project. This is not mandatory. You do not have to do this. This is really if you want to present yourself in a video or a voice, you can do that. And if you decide to do, you click yes, and then these other options come up. You can upload a video or audio file, or you can send us a link. So you need to choose one of them, and then you can send us the link. If you choose no here, it's fine as well, right? This is really up to you. And then now is the part where we really ask about your project. What is the name of your project? Please select the theme that your project most aligns with. I will check Caribbean collaboration just because there are questions that are not asked in 3.1. Again, select the main country your project will take place in, where you're registered in, or no, yes, the main country. And then since I selected Caribbean collaboration, it asks for other countries or territories that your project will take place in. And this is really like the long list. There are 40 countries and territories on this list. And as I said, it's all the islands in the Caribbean Sea and also the continental countries that align with the Caribbean Sea, the 40 different boxes to click. And you can click multiple boxes here as well. The The next question is about the Caribbean diaspora. You can or you cannot include the Caribbean diaspora. We do encourage projects to do that, but it's no obligation at all. So if you do, we will ask you where they are based usually, and you can select that. Then please choose the genre that best describes your project, and you have any genre from architecture, design, film, libraries, literature, multimedia, photography, television, everything. If you don't find yourself there, there's also the box to click other, and you have the possibility to describe. And then we get to the part that is a bit more narrative. Now, for this part that comes now, it's really boxes where you can start writing. The word count is limited. It's shown below, 250 words here. So what we recommend is that you write this down in a Word document before, that you discuss this with your team, with your collaborators. And then you just take it and copy paste it into this box. That's, for us, that would be the easiest way to do this. And so tell us about your project. We'd love to hear about your project. This is really a brief summary about who, what, where, why, and how you will do your project. The next question is, how does your project align with the theme you selected? So this is really important that you describe this as precisely and concisely as you can, 250 words as well. What issues or problems does your project address? Is the next question. And so we asked this question to understand a bit more how your project aligns with the values of the CCF and its donors. So here again, you find the values that are listed above already. What are your main objectives for the CCF grant? Feel free to combine or group related results under main objectives if it helps you clarify your goals. And we want to use this part to see, to understand what potential impact your project will have in the Caribbean or outside. How will you organize the implementation? This is really the part where you think, where you outline how you want to implement your project. So you have a bit more words that you can use here. You have 750 words. And it asks you for key dates, activities, people that are involved. You can organize it into phases, like usually there's a first phase where you set up your project, then there's the implementation phase, and at the end there might be some kind of evaluation, or maybe it's outreach. So just see what makes sense for you. The projects that we received in the last call and in the first call as well are so different. So we can't really give any real recommendations, but to just like really think it through. Think about each phase, about each activity in each phase. And while you do that, also think of the budget, which will be asked further down, but it really helps a lot to just think through all the details and then think how much each step would cost, so that later on your budget and your narrative align. The start date can be any date starting from the 1st September of this year, and the end date would be the 28th February of next year. So your project will need to take place somewhere in between those dates. What bigger changes do you hope your project will contribute to? So this is, in comparison with the objectives, this is like the broader impact and the longer term effects that your project speaks to. We asked you to talk about your key collaborators. There may be projects where the artist, the main artist works by herself or himself. Although there are likely somebody else involved. So we ask you to really outline who are the people involved, and probably in the Caribbean collaboration projects, there are much more people involved in different countries. And we would like to know about them, the project partners, the main focus persons for each partner, how the grants will be distributed among the partners as well, and how you will organize the communication on collaboration between yourselves to carry out this project. So this, please upload a formal letter of intent from each key partner. This is required because I selected Caribbean collaboration above. There is a template attached that you can use. It's a very simple template that just, I can't move down, right? I can, okay. Which just you can use to fill out this formal letter, signed, and then you attach it here. You can upload a maximum of 10 files, which are a lot. You might not have that many collaborators, but if you do, you can. Who will benefit from your project? And we've divided this into the primary beneficiaries and the indirect beneficiaries. So we ask you to just describe which communities, groups, or individuals will directly benefit from your project, and then which other groups you will target indirectly, right? Who might see what you're doing on social media, or who might visit an exhibit. So this is where you can describe these groups. This next question is, which communities and broader patterns of marginalization does your project target? This is for us more to be able to, for the future, to have a bigger idea, like which groups of people are targeted. It doesn't really make a difference for your application. I mean, we want to know, but it's not to value your application. There's no one group that is more important than another group. And if you feel you're not targeting any of specifically, you can put other, or you can put none of these, or you can put all of these. You can select all of these as well. And then the next question is more of quantitative nature. So we want to have some numbers about your beneficiaries. You have a box for the direct beneficiaries and the indirect beneficiaries of your project. It's very limited in words. So since you've described your beneficiaries above, the direct and the indirect, this part is really to just tell us approximately how many beneficiaries you will have. Again, this is not to value your project or your creative project. It's more, again, for us to really understand the project, and then also for later on, if your project does get selected, to have a possibility to see how it's going, how it's been planned, and how it works out at the end. And last but not least, it's also a requirement from our own donors to give them information about how many people have been reached with the projects that the CCF is financing. You have the possibility to upload a maximum of 3 additional files to support your project proposals. This could be a link to other films that you've done, or maybe you have a portfolio that you would like to share. Any other document that you want to share with us that you think would give more substance to your application, you can upload this here. And this is really the part about your project, the narrative, and these last questions. So we're almost through. We've gotten to the last part of this application form. 2.3 is information about your budget. So you can upload your budget here in different forms. And I've said it before, but we really recommend that you develop your budget thinking through every single step of your project, and then just write that down, because we want to see budgets that are aligned with the projects, that make sense. So if you have a Caribbean collaboration and you have artists going from one country to another, that needs to be reflected in the budget somehow, for example. So just think through everything. We don't have a format for the budget because projects are very, very different. But if you just go through the steps, think how much it costs, I'm sure it's gonna work out like really, really well. And then the last question is really, will the project you propose be financed by another person or group? If it is a larger project that will be co-financed, you can upload a proof of co-financing here, or you're required to upload a proof of co-financing here. We've gotten very many different projects in the past. So some projects are asking for funding from CCF for a very specific, limited part of a much bigger project, right? So we don't need a budget for the entire project. In many cases, that's not even possible because it just goes organically. But we really need to know what you will be doing with CCF funds, and anything that is around the CCF funds, if it makes sense to explain this here, because it's of importance of carrying out whatever you're doing with the CCF funds, you should explain the co-financing part. If it's something that's really in the future, obviously you don't need to do that. But just like think it through, think like if it's a bigger project, especially think where you are now, what you want the CCF to cover, the CCF funds to cover, and where you will be at the end of the CCF funding. So just have that in mind and try to make that clear. And then I'm sure your applications will be really, really fine and good and amazing. So, and that's it. And then you submit. And in case you cannot submit, you probably missed a question. So just go back up, see whatever you've missed. If you still can't submit, please reach out to grants@caribbeanculturefund.org, and then we'll see where the problem is. Also, Submittable has a place, I think, here under the question mark, where they have lots of possibilities to troubleshoot any difficulties you might be experiencing. You can email them, but you also, I mean, there are very many questions here. How do I submit? What is the status of my submission? There are very many questions that they will answer for you automatically, and that can help you with the application. And once you do submit, you will get a confirmation that your submission has been successfully received in our system. So I think that's it. I can't see if there are any questions, but I'll stop here, Kelly.
Thank you very much, Kat. Before we go to questions, I just want to make a few comments, kind of summarizing and adding to things that Kat raised. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to take questions about Submittable, if you have any questions about the broader application process. And then I do want to spend some time on residencies and fellowships. But just a few kind of contextualizing remarks. The questions that pertain to the values of the CCF, I just want to flag that those are relevant to all themes under this call. So regardless of what you're applying for, we need to be sure that these are projects that are aligned with our values and that are not going to create challenges for the fund. So just want to make sure that you have a look at the project, at the values, and make sure that your projects are all aligned. I did want to make some remarks about the documents because I know this is something that has seemed a bit of a challenge or a little bit onerous for some of our applicants in the past, and just want to reassure you that we are not trying to make life difficult for you, but there are two very good reasons why we need to see the documents. First, our funders require that we do our own due diligence and are certain that the individuals and organizations to whom we transfer funds are reputable entities that are acting in compliance with the law of the country that they reside in and the country that our funds come from, which is the United States. So it's a requirement on our part to make sure that we are only transferring funds to ethically appropriate recipients. And then we also have to be mindful of the many anti-money laundering legislation rules that are in play in transferring money from one Caribbean country to another. So depending on the country that you're applying from, there may be different levels of funding that attract different levels of scrutiny. Either way, we need to know to whom we're transferring the funds so that we are in compliance with both the banking regulations and with our funders. I wanted to clarify that our residences and fellowships grant stream this time around is only open to organizations. That is something that we hope to be able to address moving forward. But this is the first time we're doing it. We're testing relatively small amounts, and this call is going to be open only to organizations. So if you're an individual applicant who wants to do a residence or fellowship somewhere, it's best to reach out to that organization and have them make the application. I wanted to encourage you all. I know what it's like to fill out these applications, and I know you're trying to anticipate the answer that the reader wants. But in all things, I want to encourage everybody to be honest. As Kat explained, some of this information we're asking for to better understand your project, and some of it we're asking for our own sake because we need to be able to report to our funders about the kinds of projects that we supported and the kinds of communities that we were able to reach. In particular, there are two questions, one about the marginalized communities that are being reached and one about the numbers. I wouldn't, please don't try to game the system. Don't click all because it's unlikely that your project is going to be reaching all of these groups. Just be honest. It's not a question that's meant to punish you in any way, or as Kat said, rightly so, we don't value one community over another. We just want to be able to, at the end of the day, understand what are all the different communities that are being reached if we fund this cohort. So in all things, be as honest as possible. A small number is not necessarily going to put you at a disadvantage to a bigger number, nor is any one community going to give you an advantage over another community. It's just for us to have a clear sense of who all these different projects are reaching. And then the last thing I want to say is, please, I know you all have a lot of other things going on, but please try to put your projects in Submittable early so that if there are any glitches, you can either reach out to Submittable, as Kat pointed out, or you can reach out to us and we can try to solve the problem. It's very difficult when all of these things are coming in the last day of, and as you've seen, there are 3 of us on this team. We cannot, there are almost 100 people registered for this call, so we don't know what the full amount of applications that we're going to get is, but we expect it will be large. We want to try to assist anybody that may have difficulty, but when all of those things are happening at the same time, it's next to impossible for us to do that. So the earlier, as Kat said, download the application form, answer it with your team in Word, get your answers comfortable in the word count as prescribed, copy and paste it into Submittable. Look at the list of documents that you're going to need to upload. Make sure you have them. Don't realize the day before that you don't have a letter of intent or you don't have your ID handy and then you can't do anything about it. So fiddle around with the system. One of the reasons we switched to Submittable is that you can start your application, save it, go back and edit it and add more things to it. So start early, figure out what the glitches are, give yourself time to work them out and to go get anything else you might need, and then upload it preferably a few days before the deadline so that if there's any drama, we can actually try to help you. And then the last thing I will say is you can email us. I'm going to put the email address in the chat again, but it's info@caribbeanculturefund.org for just general questions, or grants@caribbeanculturefund.org for specific questions to the application process. If you've reached out directly to Submittable, I would also suggest that you let us know that. Sometimes it's something that we can solve, or we can at least give you an answer to. So just let us know if you're having any difficulty, and we will try to help you as much as possible. And with that, I'm going to switch over to questions. There are 2 in the Q&A that I'm going to take. So this is your time. Before we do that, sorry, I'm just going to ask you, if there's anybody on the call who's planning to apply for residencies and fellowships, so call 3.3, could you just drop that in the chat now so that we can get a sense of what the interest is for an additional session on residencies and fellowships, or if we can take those questions at the end. So please go ahead and pop that in the chat. And in the meantime, I'm going to take questions from the Q&A. And if you have additional questions, you can either pop those in the Q&A or raise your hand, and Chris will recognize you by opening the microphone. So the first question is from Michelle Rani, I believe. And Michelle, I see your question was emailed, but it was returned. So again, I'm going to put the correct address in the chat so that everybody can have access to that. And in Michelle's case, the nonprofit is registered in the US, but is aiming to raise funds for St. Kitts and Nevis. And the question is, can the project that collaborates with St. Kitts Group but held in New York qualify for this grant? So the short answer to that is no. We are going to have a call later in the year that is open to organizations in the diaspora, but this call is open to individual artists and organizations that are registered in and resident in the countries that are eligible in the call. We have had a bit of challenge in the last 2 calls with organizations that are from the diaspora getting into the call, and we really want to try to make the opportunities available to artists and organizations that are resident in the Caribbean first. I assure you that we're going to have a call that is open to the diaspora later in the year. And we also post quite a number of calls for proposals from organizations that fund entities in the United States. So we encourage you to follow us on social media. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, please do so. But there are many, many more funding opportunities available for artists in the US than for artists in the Caribbean. So we want to make sure that this call goes first to entities that are registered in the countries that are eligible in the call. Michelle, I hope that answers the question. Another question from an anonymous attendee. For an organization, would the headshot be the logo? If not, please indicate what the headshot should be. That's a great question. Yes, you can upload the logo. It's always useful for us to have it. We haven't asked for it specifically. If you're an organization, you can upload the headshot of the lead applicant or whoever is going to be the primary contact on the project, or you can also upload the logo. At the point that we contract with grantees, we will reach out to those organizations to get additional images and pieces of information. Sorry, Kat, you were saying something?
No, it's just to also say, like, it can also just be a picture of some kind of activity which is within the project or another project you've done before that has something to do with the project, right? So it's really up to you. And you can upload, I think, 3.
Great. There is a question from another anonymous attendee. Would an oral history project be applicable during this call for applications? The answer is, and I know this is not a great answer, it depends. The project, how we assess the project is really alignment to the theme first, and then the merit of the project along the lines that Kat outlined earlier. So what I can say is an oral history project is not ineligible, but it really would depend on what is the oral history project about, what impact is it going to have, what community is it going to serve, all of those questions that Kat just took you through. The answers to those would depend whether or not the project would be selected relative to the other projects that we receive, but it would certainly be eligible. Curious about the residencies, but don't have a specific question. Happy to say that if you go onto our website, which is CaribbeanCultureFund.org, you can find all of the details of the residencies and fellowships option. So you can have a look at that. And if you have a specific question, feel free to email that to us at info@CaribbeanCultureFund.org or grants@CaribbeanCultureFund.org. We have another question here as to when the grant writing session will be uploaded to YouTube. I will promise you, Anonymous, that we will get that uploaded before the end of the day today. And the link will go out to everyone who has registered for this session. Another question from Anonymous. As far as social media website info, you want to see both the ones of the person responsible for the project and the ones for the organization, or if we have for the organization 2 different websites and social media, can we share those rather? If the organization is the applicant, then yes, please share all of the social media and contact info for the organization. Kat, correct me if I'm wrong, but there should also be a room where they can add additional social media information for an individual associated with the organization as well.
So we asked for the project leader because, and that would be the
Yes.
same for the individual artist. And then we have another place where you can add for the organization. But if there's even more information, you can also upload that at the end where there was like, if you want to upload anything additional, you can also do that then.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on through the Q&A here. Let me just see if that was the last one, if there's one after that. Kat, there's a question from Mackenzie in French, if you could just help me with that.
Kat, you're on mute.
It's a question about co-financing. So if the co-financing will be done through a collective participation, I understand that as many people collectively contributing, how would you recommend that they prepare the proof of that co-financing?
We would have to have a co-financing letter from the partners who are contributing to the total. So it's hard to answer directly without understanding the specifics. But say if your budget is 100,000 and you have 5 partners who are contributing 20,000 each, then we would need proof of co-financing from each of those 5 partners. So whatever the total is, we need to, our main interest is ensuring that the project can be executed the way it is described. So we need to see proof that you have the funds to implement what you're saying you're going to implement. However many partners it takes to get you to that total, that is what we would need to see the proof of. I hope that's clear, Mackenzie. We have another anonymous question asking if a project lead for an organization is submitting a project for their organization benefiting other artists, but they are separately interested in applying for an art residency or fellowship, can they submit for both opportunities? So I'm going to answer that in 2 ways. One, it is highly unlikely that any individual or organization is going to be funded twice. So we encourage you to really think carefully about which application you submit. But just to clarify that the opportunities for residencies and fellowships will go this round to organization. So individual artists cannot apply for the residency and fellowship. If there is an organization that you would like to have that kind of relationship with, we encourage you to approach the organization and have them apply. And so that might be one way to separate your two projects into 2 completely different applications that have the possibility of getting supported. Chris, I'm going to go over to you and see.
No.
Oh no, I'm sorry. We do have a few more questions here. Can you apply for a residency and call 3.1? I think I answered that. So the residencies are organizations. Can the organization apply for 2? Yes, but know that we will not. It's highly unlikely that we will grant an organization 2 grants. So you might want to make a decision about which of those projects you think is the one that you want to lead with in this instance. The application will be sent to registered parties. How do you know if you are registered? At present, my Wi-Fi has been challenged. I think this says WISPA. I'm not sure what that means. So let me walk backwards, and then if that doesn't answer your question satisfactorily, feel free to put up your hand and ask it out loud. What I think what you're referring to is me saying that we will send the link to the YouTube channel to everybody who's registered today. That's separate from the application. So the applications are available now online on our Submittable platform, which I will ask Kat or Chris to just pop the direct address into the chat. If you are on this call, you've signed up for it, so we have your email address and you will be receiving notices from us, but you don't need anything from us right now to go on to Submittable and begin your application. I hope that's clear, Whisper, but if that's not what you are asking, then just put up your hand and we'll take your question directly. Kat, just correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the question in French from the attendee is, can you submit a project if the country that you live in regularly is not eligible and you don't have a resident card there, but you're resident in an eligible country, but you don't live there regularly? So unless I'm misunderstanding this, the answer would be no. Like we need to be certain that you're going to be available in this country, that you can legally live or visit in this country long enough to execute the project the way the project is described to us. So if the country that you live in regularly is not eligible, then what we would do is encourage you to wait until we open another call for which that country is eligible. Or you can find an organization to partner with in a country that is eligible and have that organization or that individual artist submit the application. But the setup, the way this is described here, sounds as though you would not be eligible. I'm going to go
also
back
the project
to...
will need to be at least partly implemented in that country as well, right?
Yes,
Just
absolutely.
to have that in mind as well.
I'm going to go back to Whisper's. The link asks for one to register, though by listening, I am already registered. Yeah, so Whisper, I'm just need to clarify if you mean registered for this session versus registered as a legal entity in an eligible country. So again, if I'm not understanding you correctly, just put up your hand and ask a question and we may be able to get you a better answer that way. I'm gonna take Johnny's question and Kat ask you to answer this one. Can you remind me of the date when the results will be published, as well as the start date of the projects?
So we're hoping to be able to publish the results on the 31st of July. And then the projects would start in September.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So Mackenzie, that's a great question, and it's a difficult one. Obviously, we would not expect you to get 200 letters of intent for co-financing, but I will ask the question to you. What could you provide us as proof that you have co-financing? If your plan is to collect the funding from 200 persons, it's difficult to conceive that you would be in a position to prove that you will have that co-financing by the time this application is due on the 15th. And so I'm not sure that I'm understanding. It doesn't sound to me from what you've said that you currently have the co-financing in hand. And if that is not the case by the time the application is being assessed, then that application would not be supported because we would not be able to guarantee that the project is going to be implemented. So if I'm not understanding correctly, or if there's another route for co-financing, I would encourage you to explore that. But what it sounds like is that you have a plan to collect this collective co-financing. But the way it's constructed, it's difficult to envision that you're going to be able to do that within 2 weeks. If I'm not understanding correctly, please feel free to describe it. But what you need for the application is proof that you have the funds to implement the rest of the project that the CCF funds will not cover. And we need to know that you have that while we're assessing the project, while the jury is assessing the project. I'm going to move on to, I am not seeing this, to Ismelia Dijwa, who has 2 questions. She's based in Haiti, and the cost for registering a company that is eligible to accept grants is about $550. Since I've been funding myself, I've not been able to register due to the total amount I have to cover. I sent you an email about the necessary paperwork to apply for the grant, but haven't received any reply. I don't have any partners at the moment. Is that a problem? So apologies for not replying. I'm going to ask Chris and Kat just to check the addresses to see if there's anything that we've missed, but let me take the question now. As Kat said in the beginning, our grants are open to individuals, informal and formally constituted collectives, and registered entities. You are able to apply as an individual, which should solve the problems that you're having here. Funds that the CCF provides can also be used to cover registration costs. We do have a couple of individual artists who are planning to make that transition during the life of the grant. What we would need to see is that you on your own can implement the project the way that you have described it. And I don't have the exact number, but I would say that we've, in the 50 grants that we've funded so far, maybe a third to a half of those are individual artists. So individual artists are not, don't fare negatively against larger groups or even formal organizations. So it really is dependent on your ability to be convincing that you can execute the project the way the project is described. I'm going to take the next question, which is from, oops, I'm sorry here. Anonymous attendee, are you looking for the full budget and proof of how it will be sustained with a sidebar as to what these funds will be used for within this budget, sponsorship, personal funds, etc.? The answer to that, again, is it depends. If your project can be implemented with the CCF funds alone, then that's what we're looking for. If you describe a project that requires more money to implement it, then we need to see the proof of where you're getting those funds for. And those could be personal funds, sponsorships, additional grant support. It depends on the budget of the project that you describe to us in your narrative. With respect to co-financing, can our organization co-finance? Do you need a letter from us for that? The answer is yes, you can put in personal funds or company funds into the project, and you would provide a letter to that effect. Can collaborations be invitees that will participate that do not have any stake in the event or in its planning other than their specific art form being presented? The answer to that is no. I think I would encourage you to look back at the orientation video, which is currently on our YouTube channel, where we spoke a bit about the difference between a collaborative project and one that just invites in participants from another country. What we're looking for in this round is meaningful collaboration between creatives in one or more Caribbean country, which means that they have to have a stake in the project. They have to have had a part in designing the project. They have to have a stake in the outcomes. Those are the principles that the CCF is trying to support with this particular round. We do have projects that have invited in participation that have been funded through other themes. So maybe this is something that can be funded through Art for Change, but for Caribbean collaboration, we're specifically looking for that kind of meaningful collaboration in all phases of the project. Next question from Anonymous. If the project begins a few days before September 1, should the organization still submit an application? Kat, I'm going to defer to you there.
I think that's completely possible. We've had those kind of constellations where people start the project a few days before, and then but what is important for us is that you will not be able to hand in any invoices because of, like, if you implement your project with funds from the CCF, those will have to be within the ranges of the dates that we have set out, and they cannot be expended, the funds cannot be expended before the signature of the project. Right? So this is also a question to you, Kelly, but it could be possible because since we give out the results end of July, if the process of signing the contract goes very quickly and they
Yeah.
receive the funds, it is a possibility, right? To also start a little bit
Yes,
earlier.
it really depends on the contract date. So just so everyone understands, we
Mhm.
are not able to, we have to have a legally binding contract with you before we can transfer funds to you. And so any invoices that we want to include as part of the audit record of this project cannot have been transacted before the date that your project starts. However, one of the things that we do when we bring in a new cohort is to try to figure out which projects have really time sensitive dates and get those contracted as fast as possible. Given that we know this from the application process, that's certainly something that we can be mindful of. So yes, that's a situation that we should be able to work around. Whisper again has a question about, you can't raise your hand, but asking if you will be recognized as a registered interest to actually receive access to download. So the answer is yes. So we have your contact information by virtue of your being on this call, and we will send out a link to any new posts that are made. But just to encourage you all, the information that we share is also shared on our website, CaribbeanCultureFund.org, and our YouTube channel is where all of the videos for the various sessions that we host are housed. So even without being on the mailing list, anybody can go to the website, go to our YouTube channel and check out the past videos, check out the criteria for the call, and get access to the details that have been shared in previous sessions. Susan is asking a question about whether or not there's a form that has a question so that we can write and edit first. It seems right now I have to finish page 1 to see page 2. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the full questions is now available on the website.
They are all the questions for each section of the call are available on the website.
So those are all now available on CaribbeanCultureFund.org, and you can download those, print them out, and work with them with your team, and then upload your answers into Submittable. Hi, Johnny, I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, but could you please remind me of the requirements for an organization working with another institution on administrative procedures? I heard that there are some restrictions regarding transfers abroad. Could you provide more information about this? So I'm gonna try to answer, but if I don't answer satisfactorily, just raise your hand or ask another question in the chat. So the restrictions are, we really try to make sure that we are supporting organizations that are based in the countries in the call. And so we do have question when we see a bank account that's presented outside of the countries, we do sort of query that. There have been perfectly legitimate reasons why organizations that are registered and active in a country in the Caribbean may prefer to use a bank account that's in another country. And once we've satisfied that the organization actually is registered and active in the country that we're trying to support, we have been able to make those transfers. So if that's the situation that you're describing, it shouldn't be a problem. We also have been able to fund through fiscal sponsors in the past, or organizations that we work with that have had another organization that's handling the finances for them. Where possible, it's sometimes easier if that organization is an entity that applies, but if not, you can let us know how your relationship with that organization works. So my answer, Johnny, is yes, but it depends on the circumstances. What we're really trying to make sure is that the work is happening in the country that we're trying to support, and this is an organization that is legitimately active there and able to execute the project as planned. If there are extenuating circumstances why the funds need to be transferred to another country, then we can work around that. So Michelle is asking the question again. I'm gonna say again, Michelle, this call is not open to organizations that are registered in the diaspora. So we would encourage you to have the group or organization based in St. Kitts be the applicant on this project. The call that will open later this year will be open to diaspora organizations. And we also encourage you to check our website and social media regularly, because we regularly post funding opportunities that are open to organizations in the diaspora, particularly organizations based in the United States. So for this call, we're trying to prioritize entities that are based in the Caribbean. Chris, I think I have now exhausted the questions in the Q&A. So this may be a good time to just check if there are any raised hands, although someone said that there was difficulty raising hands. But if there are any, then we can open the microphone to take those questions. And I also am checking the chat, but I don't see any
No, the chat
indications in the chat.
But the Q&A, someone just wrote in. So do you want to respond to that? We have two persons who raised their hand. Michelle Rani, I'm sorry about the pronunciation if I'm not doing it correctly, and Whisper Hendricks had raised his hand. So how do you want to deal with these two persons?
So Whisper, I think I may have taken your question already. So if that's the case, can you you can put your hand down, but if you have a new question, then definitely leave it up and we'll recognize you. I'm just going to take these two questions before we switch back. So Selene asked, can an organization receive funding 2 years in a row? Are there currently any limitations? Selene, at this time, we are not set up for recurring funding. That's certainly something that we hope to be able to move towards. But as I said in the orientation session, to date, CCF has funded 50 grants. That is 50 grants out of a total pool of over 700 applicants. We are painfully aware that we are not supporting, even a reasonable fraction of the need that exists. And so at this point, we are trying to take an equity approach to funding and trying to make sure that our funds are available across a wide cross-section of countries, a wide cross-section of sectors, a wide cross-section of individual artists and organizations. And so that makes it less likely that we will be doing repeat funding in the short term. It's certainly something that we hope to grow towards. So wish us well with our fundraising, because that is actually what is going to allow us to be able to make that shift. Another question from Anonymous: if an organization sends in an application, A, if the lead position has to temporarily be switched due to someone else from the same organization for the project implementation, or B, if one lead has to start, then another finish the project, would this be feasible? I would say that depends. It's certainly concerning. Our interest, as I've said several times today, is making sure that the projects get executed the way they're designed. On one hand, it's good that you're anticipating this change, and so I imagine that your organization would be able to plan for it. But we would need to see in the application a sense that these issues, these leadership issues, are going to be meaningfully addressed. It depends on whether or not the ability to implement a project rests on the expertise or the connections of the lead who may be leaving. That would certainly create concerns about whether or not the project would be executed well throughout the project. But it depends on your ability to explain to us why this is happening, or explain to the jury. Mind you, we do not evaluate the project, but explain to the jury why this change is necessary and what fail-safes the organization is going to put in place to make sure that the project continues to be implemented smoothly despite this change in leadership. And Chris, we can go to the hands.
Okay, we have Michelle Rani. Kelly, you might have host.
I might have answered Michelle's question already.
No, you have hosting. You're still the
Oh,
host.
sorry, my goodness. Okay,
Sorry
so
about that.
I need to unmute her, or I could just make you,
Whichever
I could
one.
make you
We're
host.
actually here to help. Sorry, Michelle, that's a technical difficulty on my part.
Yeah. I was not, let me see if I can. All right, Chris, I'm gonna give you back the host and then you can
No problem. Thank you.
recognize Michelle. Apologies, Michelle. You are now the host, Chris.
Michelle, can you go ahead, please? Thank you so much for being so patient.
That's okay. Thank you so much. And I apologize because you may have answered my question, but I had to step away and come back. So our not-for-profit is established in New York, but we are Kittitians, and we have an opportunity to host an event in New York celebrating Kittitian and Division arts and culture, and all the funds we use, we fund fellowships in St. Kitts and Nevis. And the celebration of arts and culture will be with groups on St. Kitts. And I wondered whether the 3.2 our particular situation qualifies for collaboration within the context of your 3.2 criteria. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Michelle, for clarifying. It would qualify for collaboration, but we would need the lead applicant has to be based in St. Kitts. The way you described the call now, it sounds like a diaspora call, and that is by no means a judgment of the value of the call or its impact in St. Kitts. We recognize that diaspora organizations play a tremendous role in supporting countries in the Caribbean, especially in arts and culture. But the priority of the fund is to make opportunities available for artists and organizations first in the region. And we are very aware that we have not yet worked our way around the region. So this call prioritizes artists and organizations based in eligible countries. The next call will be open to artists and organizations based in the Caribbean diaspora. So as I said earlier, I would encourage you to wait for that call. Look at other funding opportunities that we share, many of which are open to organizations in the US, or for this call to have the lead applicant be the organization that is based in St. Kitts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Chris, there was another hand?
No, they've put their hand down, so I think you answered the question. We have
No,
sorry,
okay.
no, Max Dennis just put up their hands. I'm gonna allow them to talk. And then we have a few more additional questions in the question and answer section.
Okay.
Maxine?
Yes, I would like to I would like to ask the question. I am Haitian living in Dominican Republic. I am legal in this country, but I am not a resident. And I want to present a collaborative project between about the Haitian community in Dominican Republic. So I want to know if I can present it because I physically more in Dominican Republic.
Sorry, Maxine, where would the project be based? Where are the project activities taking place?
In Dominican Republic and in the frontier.
You mean on the border?
But most in Dominican Republic.
Is that correct? But mostly in the Dominican Republic. Yeah, that's a difficult one because of the circumstances in Haiti. So what I will say, Maxine, is that priority would be given to projects that are actually taking place in Haiti. I think because of the extenuating circumstances there, the project would be red, but the priority will go to projects that are actually going to take place within Haiti.
Okay.
But we do understand that there are severe constraints. So I think in this case, the steering committee would make an exception. So that project, we wouldn't say it's not eligible, but the priority would be given to projects that are actually going to take place in Haiti.
Yeah, but it's a collaborative project between the, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see with, I would say I wouldn't say it's ineligible. So I think it would depend on the description of the project and on how the project is going to be implemented. So the project would be read, and it would depend on what the details of the project are.
I mean, maybe if it's a collaboration and you're planning to apply under the Caribbean
Yeah.
collaboration, the 3.2.
Which is what he just said. So I think it might, it again, it would depend.
In that case, maybe Maxence, you have somebody in Haiti that could be the lead applicant of the project and then collaborating with you, who is currently based in the Dominican Republic. That
Oui, tout à
may
fait.
also be a possibility.
Oui, je travaille aussi avec des artistes en Haïti. Oui.
C'est ça. Ça veut dire si
Yeah,
ils
then-
sont les collaborateurs, ils pourraient peut-être être le main applicant et puis voilà.
D'accord.
Mhm.
D'accord.
Yeah.
Merci.
Thank you, Maxine. Okay, Marilyn has a question. We want to find out if the group is a new or young group in existence over a year but not registered. Can this group collaborate with an organization that is registered to submit? The answer is yes. You also don't need to. You do not need to be formally registered to apply. The CCF does give funds to individual artists. As I think I said earlier, there are a few projects that we know one of the goals of the project is to formally register an entity during the life of the project, and we are open to that. So yes, you can collaborate with a group that is already registered, but you are also free to apply in your own right as a group, as long as the group meets the other eligibility criteria. Kat, I'm going to ask you for help with Mackenzie's question.
Is it possible to cover the costs of formalization of an organization with the CCF fund?
Yes, so we don't have restrictions on the use of funds. We, as I think I said earlier, you can use some of the funds to register the organization, especially if part of your project is creating an organization that will make this work sustainable. However, I would encourage you to just be balanced in your use of the funds and make sure that their funds are being used to have impact in other creative and artistic ways, and not just, solely on registration costs, so that the merit of your project can be evaluated against the merit of a project by an organization that's already established. I hope that's clear. In other words, you don't want too much of your project budget to be going to setting up an organization, because that means that your actual project impact is likely to be less than the project impact of a project led by an entity that's already registered. So just make sure it's not using up too much of your funds, but it certainly is an eligible expense. Milena is asking, should we complete the submittable in English rather than French? As you three are mostly English speaking, will it make it easier to evaluate for you? Yes, it would, but we also have members of the jury who speak languages who speak all the languages of the territories represented by the fund. And so when we constitute the jury, we do divide up the applications based on the languages that the jurors speak. So if you speak English well enough to complete the application, that's fine. In English, that's fine. But if you are more comfortable expressing yourself in French or in Spanish, I don't think we have any, or we have Suriname, yeah, or in Dutch, then feel free to do that, and we will make sure that your application is read by a juror who speaks that language.
I would, though, recommend that you fill it out in the language I mean, that's what Kelly's saying, but we had one case where a person from a French-speaking country filled it out in another language, and somehow, like, the juries didn't link up the way it was supposed to, because we will have a jury member for each of the countries, and those are the first to be evaluating the project. So if it's in the language that they most likely speak, it'll probably be better.
Yeah, I agree with Kat. I think just the language that allows you to express yourself best is the language that you should use. Leave it up to us to do the translation. I mean, as you've seen from this call, we hire translators when we need to. Kat is very gifted and speaks many languages, but we're not averse to hiring translators if we need to. And I want to make sure that everyone has the fairest chance to express themselves in the best way
And we're not
possible.
the
So
ones to
and we're not the
evaluate
ones
the project.
evaluating.
It's the jury, and the jury member
the
will be
projects.
speaking French. The jury member for Haiti
Yeah.
will be speaking French.
Yeah. If the applicants are based in a country named in the call, but a major part of the project is in another country not named in the call, but is another Caribbean country, would it qualify as a collaboration under 3.2? The answer to that is yes, as long as the other criteria for collaboration are met, meaning that there is meaningful participation of creatives or organizations from more than one country in the design and in the implementation of the project. But yes, there is a long list of Caribbean countries from which collaborators are eligible. Samuel asks, is the Kat, translate for me.
Does the CCF finance
cool.
ongoing activities of an organization?
I feel like I've said this too many times, but it depends. It depends on which of those ongoing activities are related to the actual project that you're going to implement. So if you have a more specific example, Sam, feel free to raise your hand. But what we're really looking for is a budget that supports the implementation of whatever brilliant project you have decided to submit. So I'll give you examples. In the past, projects that we funded have included payments to the artists, payments to the administrative lead of the organization. I think we've had some budgets include fees for communication expenses. If you mean something like your rent or legal fees or things that are not directly related to the actual project that we're discussing, those are likely to not be supported. So try to think about what funds you actually need to do the work that you're describing and not just to run the day-to-day life of the organization.
So Samuel is just saying they have a visual art project for women, which has already started. So it might be a request to contribute.
So Sam, just to clarify, so the CCF funds brand new projects or ongoing projects. We don't specify. What we need to see is that there is some discrete part of this ongoing activity that can be carved out, supported during the project period that we've described and for the funds that we've set aside. So you might want to think about what set of activities can you bookend in the ongoing life of the project that you can describe as a mini project. So it has specific impact, it has a specific budget, it has its own sort of purpose or objective, just some way to why this particular piece of your ongoing activity makes sense. Because, and again, we ask for that because we're trying, you have to think of it in terms of the jurors. The jurors are trying to compare project A to project B and making a decision. And so you kind of have to try to give them comparable things to measure so that they can make those decisions more easily. All right, we are getting close to time, so I just wanted to do one last check. Is there anyone here who has any specific questions about residencies and fellowships that we have not yet covered? If you do, please feel free to email us at info@caribbeanculturefund.org. If there is interest, we're willing to have another session on residencies and fellowships next Tuesday. So please let us know if that is something that you would need us to do. And feel free again to email us with any other questions, comments, points of clarification that you might need as you go through completing your applications. I want to thank Chris and Kat for all their work in setting up today's session, and Kat for leading us through Submittable. Thank you to Janina and Tony for providing translation for us this morning. And thank you to all of you for joining. We're very excited to see the large number of people who registered and people who showed up for the session. It means that you're thinking about the projects already. And from the little snippets that we've heard, we're encouraged that we're going to get some good applications. The last thing I will say is to encourage you to have a look at our website, caribbeanculturefund.org. There you'll find the details for the project, but you can also find the past projects that we funded. So have a look, get some idea of the kinds of projects that the CCF has funded before. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. So thank you for joining and have a great day.